Long before the Roman legions marched, before Alexander conquered the world, there was another empire, vast, radiant, and unmatched in power, an empire that ruled from the Indus River to the Aegean Sea, from the mountains of Persia to the sands of Egypt. It was called the Achaemenid Empire. The world would come to know it by one name: Persia. The story begins in the rugged lands of ancient Iran, a region of fierce tribes and proud kings. Among them rose a man destined to reshape the ancient world, Cyrus II, later known as Cyrus the Great. In the 6th century BC, Cyrus united the Persian tribes under one banner and turned his eyes toward conquest. But his genius wasn't just in war. He ruled not by fear, but by respect. When he conquered Babylon, he freed its captives, including the Jewish people, and declared a policy of tolerance, allowing every nation to worship their own gods. The Cyrus Cylinder, discovered centuries later, stands as the world's first charter of human rights, a declaration of compassion and justice, written in clay. Under Cyrus, Persia became not just an empire of land, but of ideas. After Cyrus's death, his legacy was carried forward by a line of kings, Darius and Xerxes, each expanding Persia's reach and glory. Darius the Great, in particular, transformed Persia from a kingdom into a superpower. He built roads that spanned thousands of miles, connecting cities from Sardis to Susa. The most famous of all, the Royal Road allowed messages to travel across the empire in just a week. Under his rule, the Persians built Persepolis, a city of marbled terraces and golden halls, the beating heart of imperial power. Here, ambassadors from across the known world brought tribute, gold, and slaves to kneel before the King of Kings. But even the greatest empires cannot escape pride, and soon, Persia's ambition would lead it into conflict with a rising power: the Greeks. The Persian Wars began as a punishment. The Greek city-states had supported revolts in Ionia, and Darius sought vengeance. His armies marched across the Aegean, carrying banners of gold and iron. But in 490 BC, at the Battle of Marathon, a small Greek force stopped the Persian advance. A decade later, Darius's son Xerxes the First launched a far greater invasion. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers crossed the Hellespont on floating bridges. Giant warships filled the sea like a forest of masts. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans and a few thousand allies made their stand, and though they fell, their defiance became legend. At Salamis, the Greek navy outmaneuvered the Persians, burning their fleet in the narrow straits. The might of Persia had been humbled by the courage of the few. It was not the end of Persia, but the first sign that even empires could bleed. Despite defeat, Persia endured, adapting, rebuilding, and thriving. Trade flourished along the Silk Road. Art and architecture reached new heights, and its satrapy system, local governors under royal rule, ensured stability across vast lands. Persian tolerance became its strength. Different cultures, languages, and religions coexisted under one empire, connected by the king's justice and the god Ahura Mazda, the light against darkness. The Persian Empire stood as a model of governance, diplomacy, and multicultural unity, something the world would not see again for centuries. But even as it shone at its brightest, the cracks began to form. The late Achaemenid kings grew distant and decadent. The grandeur of Persepolis became a prison of politics. Intrigue, betrayal, and corruption seeped into the royal court. While Persia turned inward, a new power was rising to the west, a young kingdom led by a man with impossible ambition, Alexander of When Alexander crossed into Asia in 334 BCE, he came not just for conquest, but for revenge. The Persian invasions of Greece had burned into his people's memory, and Alexander vowed to end the empire that once sought to crush them. At Issus and Gaugamela, Persian armies, Dovasti fell before his strategy and speed. The last great Persian king, Darius III, fled his own battlefield and was betrayed by his men. Alexander marched triumphantly into Persepolis and set it aflame. The flames that devoured the Persian capital were more than revenge. They were the end of an age. Though conquered, Persia did not die. Its culture, religion, and language survived, influencing everything from Greek philosophy to Islamic civilization. Even Alexander, in victory, chose to adopt Persian dress and customs, seeking to merge East and West into one empire. Centuries later, Persian empires would rise again, the Parthians, the Sassanids, proving that Persia's spirit could not be erased. Its art, governance, and architecture inspired Rome, Byzantium, and beyond. The empire's ruins, Persepolis, Pasargadae, still whisper the legacy of kings who believed that order, not chaos, could rule the world. The Persian Empire rose through vision, unity, and tolerance, and fell through arrogance and pride. But its greatest victory was not in war or conquest. It was in the idea that power could coexist with mercy, and diversity could thrive under one flag. Empires fall, but ideas endure. And perhaps that is why thousands of years later, we still remember Persia, not for how it ended, but for how it led. Long after the marble crumbled and the kings turned to dust, the idea of Persia, noble, vast, eternal, lived on.